Hi, it's Deborah Hamilton, Hamilton Law Mediation, the Why Do Pets Matter podcast. And of course, this, my wonderful MAAP community call, which I'm so glad all of you are here again today. So much has happened. I'm actually in North Carolina today, so it's a little bit different. It's making me think about all those things that you have to think about when you travel with or without your pets. But I also have 3 different things that came up today. So I want to share them with you guys quickly. Then I'm going to check in to see how everyone's doing. So the first one is I have 2 people who are in a relationship breakup and just absolutely killing each other over the pets. And, you know, the person who has the dogs has a much stronger hand in the discussion than the person who doesn't have the dog. So if I can implore everyone and anyone to say, have a plan before you dislike your relationship person and you're sharing the pets with it. Because if you have that plan before, it's more than likely going to hold you to that plan going forward, or at least you have somewhere to start. I know making a plan for what would happen if we break up is not anything anybody wants to do because we're never going to break up. But really, I'm even going to add it to my plan because my husband really loves my dogs. And if something were to happen to me, or if I was traveling, I know my husband would want to take care of my dogs. So I'm going to put that in so that he has that opportunity. And we should all think about that because it is really important to forestall what some of these people are going through. And I was just contacted by a couple who was arguing. Kieran got lost. He lost internet. That, you know, they're 3 years now arguing, and just it's so difficult. And they went to mediation, obviously not with me, and didn't work. And I'm not sure I could have worked it out either because I'm having a really tough time with this other group as well. So it really is something that, you know, I'm going to talk about and hope to do with a co-arbitrator, because I really think that it needs to be 2 people discussing the outcome. Hi, Kieran. Oh, thank God. We thought we lost you. Oh, it doesn't look like you're in Tenerife, Kieran. So that's one of the things I want to really press to everyone. If they have a pet, they have a significant other, make sure that they just, while they still like each other, sit down and say, how are we going to share these dogs going forward? And, you know, that's Murphy's Law, right? If you make a plan for it, it never happens. So I am a big believer in Murphy's Law. If you plan for it, it's never going to happen. If you don't plan for it, it's always going to happen. So let's take some of my good advice, since that's what's coming through my office, and make a plan on how we're going to move forward with our pets if something, you know, were to happen in our relationship and we weren't together anymore. As I always say, your pets don't hate your ex, which I know makes you really angry, but that's the way life is. So let's make sure we do that. The second thing I wanted to touch upon was to make sure that you really keep in touch with the people who you've purchased your dog from, your cat from, your horse from, because it's not just up to them to mentor you. It's up to you to ask them questions, because there's this fine line. And the line is, am I pissing the breeder off and bothering them? Or am I not really asking them enough questions and they don't want to piss me off by inquiring all the time? I just sent an email to one of my owners who has one of my puppies, who is like the worst at sending pictures. And for me, that's sort of my lifeline. And I'm trying so hard to not be, you know, pushy, but I really do want some pictures of this puppy because she's had some of my dogs before, so I know the dog is incredibly well cared for. But I thrive on seeing pictures of my dog. So how, as breeders, do we create that discussion and that conversation to enable people now with cell phones to take pictures and just text them to us? Just say here. And then when we get those pictures, please don't comment negatively on them. Oh my God, look at how long her nails are, which of course I do a great number of times to Sally and Gordon. When they send pictures, I always say, oh my God, look at Athena's nails. And then I say to myself, why did I do that? Because it really doesn't make people feel warm and fuzzy about sending you pictures, right? Because you're commenting on how bad their grooming is or whatever. So we as breeders have to understand, if they send us pictures, we should be grateful. And that's all I'm looking for now. And if we do, you know, want to suggest something, do it in a very empathetic compassionate way. Don't do what I do what I say, because I do sometimes tend to make comments that, oh my God. But thankfully my owners know me well enough and understand that I'm only doing it because they know that the dog will be more comfortable. But really be careful when you're saying that. So without further ado, let me check in with everybody. Sally, how are you? I know you sent me pictures of the snow. We have no snow here in North Carolina. Nice sunsets. We had a nice sunset last night, but no snow. So I'm really thrilled. Hi, Marty. How are you? It's good to see you. So we'll start with a check-in now. Sally, how's everything going with you?
Well, I have two redheads staring at me because they're wondering,
where's that voice coming from?
Yeah, exactly. Why do you sound like our real mom? So it's absolutely wonderful, because if I keep looking over there, I had to go out of my office and into my home, and I have two redheads like right there looking at me like, why do you have my mom's voice on tonight?
In that box. Why is my mom trapped in that box? Yes, absolutely. So everything's going well, though. How's your plan coming?
Like you said, and Connie also, wrote me an email. I just keep thinking of more and more things. Interesting, in our neighborhood yesterday, two mastiffs got loose, and a neighbor texted me, do you know where two 200-pound dogs should be? And I said, not a chance. I called my friend at Animal Control. She said, oh, we just had, this is 11:08. She goes, at 11 a.m., we just got a report, 2 missing dogs. And I go, well, perfect. And like, we kind of put it together, and they went from 3 houses on down our road. And like by the evening, they were back home
Thank God.
and it was like 19 degrees yesterday. Yeah.
Thank
So
God.
I'm sure they wanted to see my 2 females. So
yeah, they probably wanted to come and see the girls. Absolutely. So I'm glad you're still working on that program, though, because it really is important to make sure that, you have them put in, especially since one of your caregivers is moving away. So that's good to know.
Yeah. Critical. Yes.
Critical.
Thank you.
Critical. Susan, how's everything going with you?
Deborah, it's going okay. I feel guilty because I haven't worked on my plan. Just life has been crazy, and I'm glad you rose that question about, sending pictures to your breeder, because I'm really bad about that. And part of the problem is I haven't been grooming my dog as much as I should be. So I'm a little bit embarrassed.
Yeah, but we truly understand as breeders, and we should. That's what I started with, right? Breeders should really not comment about the long nails and the bad grooming if they really want to keep in touch with their owners.
Yeah,
that comes later, because you really want to see what the dog looks like. And yes, we do like our dogs groomed beautifully. However, there are times, even in my life, when my dogs don't look like show dogs. They look, well, Roxy looks like a ragamuffin right now. But I try not to have slippers. I think if I don't have slippers, I'm doing really well. And I think I'm ahead of the game if I don't have slippers.
I know. What I remember when I picked up my dog from the groomer, the breeder, she had him her was so impeccable. And she showed me all these special things that she did to cut the nails. And it sounded overwhelming. And
yeah,
I even bought a grooming table, but I have never used it. And she told me I should get my shears from Chris Christensen. So I haven't done that yet, but
well, it's a big thing. I will tell you that they will have Catan grooming videos on YouTube. They will probably have Catan grooming videos on the National Club homepage. And remember, you got in touch with your breeder to see who might be nearby, who could care for Maggie if something happened to you. Those people might also be able to, if not groom the dog for you for a fee, might be able to put you in touch with someone who can groom the dog for a fee.
Because I'd be happy to take her to a groomer if I wasn't worried about COVID.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. I'm constantly thinking about COVID, and
Well, I think you absolutely have to be aware of that. Absolutely. I think that I know that we have a new member here. I wonder where Kieran went. He must have lost his internet in Tenerife. But our new member here, or our new visitor here, is my dear friend Marty Greer, who's a reproductive vet. And so we can wait and ask her if taking the dog to a groomer and doing curbside pickup and drop off is dangerous. Because, you know, we're doing that with our veterinarians now. We're taking our dogs to our veterinarians, curbside drop off.
Right.
So if you found someone who could groom the dog, maybe I know that I can't remember who told me they took their dog somewhere and then came home and bathed it. So I don't know if that's something that's, you know, I know that catching COVID from dogs might not necessarily be a number one transmitter of COVID, but I guess it could happen. So let me check in with Connie, and then we'll ask. Would that be okay, Susan? We'll check in with Connie, and then we'll introduce.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
We'll introduce Marty in a minute. So Connie, check in. How's everybody at the Wheaton household doing?
We are fine. We actually got some rain this morning, and it looks as though it's threatening to do it again. We've only had less than 4.5 inches all year. We're like, 7, 8 inches behind the power curve. And speaking of grooming and having your dogs look like show dogs, young Mr. Casey, who's going to be 2 years old on the 20th, Mr. Vernal Equinox, went right out as soon as the rain stopped and plunked into a big mud puddle and started scratching his beard. And so his whole back end is dried mud right now. So, don't talk to me about show dogs looking like show dogs.
Yeah. It's a minute by minute thing, I think.
It's exactly, but we are doing fine. And fortunately, the vaccine rate is going way up in California. And I'm due to get my second Fauci ouchie next week on the 11th, Thursday. Hey. So I will be good to go. And we still haven't opened up any kind of dog shows or trials here in California, but people are kind of tentatively scheduling.
Yeah.
So the dog community is getting back in action, but we are shut down for rescue, both at the local level and our national club, except for extreme emergencies, because again, COVID.
Yeah, I have to tell you that I've had several cases in my office of disagreements that happened at dog shows over meeting the COVID rules at a dog show.
Yes,
I think everyone is incredibly anxious. I think that their triggers are very short or quick, and so things are being said and done that if anybody had a minute to breathe, that would be great. But that hasn't necessarily been the case in at least in my office, because I keep getting them and I keep going, oh my God. And I keep saying, why can't we just work this out? I'm firmly convinced that if we had a training on how to hold a bench show hearing, things would be much better. But it's just a booklet you're supposed to read. And of course, that's subject to interpretation. And I really feel that there has to be a little bit more hands-on training on how to run a bench show. But that's a whole nother community call. So we'll do that some other time. So before I leave her out any longer, hey, Marty, how are you? Tell us a little bit about you, where you're from. I know Wisconsin.
I'm halfway between Milwaukee and Green Bay. So on the east side, I do general veterinary practice, and I have a lot of reproduction in the practice as well. And just finished writing a book called Your Pandemic Puppy.
I love it.
And am opening a drive-through veterinary clinic in the next 2 weeks.
Yay, good for you. That is fabulous, because Susan was worried about, catching COVID from her dog at the groomer. And I think that would be a risk also at a veterinarian. But most people, I don't think that's as much of a risk, is it? I mean, I might be wrong.
We have not seen any indication that veterinarians are at increased risk or the clients are. So at this point, I would be comfortable in saying that the dogs are okay, that they can't take it home with them. I have been working every single day since this started, and we only wore masks when we were required to. And so far in my office with 40 employees, we've had 3 people get it, but we don't think any of them got it at our place of employment because it wasn't spreading through. So I think the risks of dogs carrying it in, and we certainly have clients that call us and say we need to cancel our appointment. I'm not feeling well, but we have yet to have a dog that comes in that we think gave anybody COVID.
Or that a dog picked it up at the vet practice and took it home with them.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, Susan, I think that if you call your breeder and say, do you know anybody nearby who might be able to groom the dog? Because we truly, the first 2 minutes, I was giving two updates. Marty, I'll give them real quick so you know. One is, if you're in a relationship and you have dogs, please write your plan of how you're going to share those dogs now while you like each other. Because my office is inundated with relationship breakups where the person who's in possession of the dog tells the other person how they're going to share, which, believe me, share is not a word that's used and defined any way that I've ever seen it defined, but that's okay. So you really need to make that plan to share while you still like each other, because, unfortunately, your pet doesn't hate your ex, unless they're, were never a part of the dog's lives, never took care of the dogs, or just doing it to hurt you more. That's another discussion. But most of the time, and I know Marty's husband is a wonderful veterinarian as well, they like the dogs and they like each other. And if they broke up, probably they would be able to work something out, unless they were really angry at each other. And those are the clients who are coming to my office, are the ones that are really angry with each other and need to take the dogs away so that I never have to see you again. And believe me, as a mediator, I can absolutely hold a safe space for that. And I try as I can to come at it from the pet's point of view. So the pet really likes the other person, even though you don't. And maybe not a week on, a week off, a month on, a month off. But if you go on vacation or something like that, have a third party drop the dog off, pick the dog up. Let's see if that would work, because the dogs would prefer being with, your ex than being in a kennel 9 times out of 10. So that's why you want to make these plans before anything occurs. And the other piece that I shared was to share pictures with your breeder. So I always harp, Marty, on how breeders should keep in touch with their puppy owners. But I also have to tell the puppy owners that they should keep in touch with their breeder. There's a fine line between being annoying and really being in touch. And like I tell Susan's one of our Catan owners. She's lovely. And, she's a little afraid to, you might have heard it, she's a little afraid to call her breeder because her Catan looks like a woolly mammoth, sort of like my spayed Irish setter. But we don't care. We really don't care. We just want pictures. I think you would say that, Marty.
Yeah, we want pictures. We want health histories. We want to know what's going on with your dog, because we can't run a breeding program if we don't know if you've had a health problem. And it's not that you're blaming anybody, you're just being informative. And we can't breed away from something if we don't know it's there. Right. So we encourage people to have an annual puppy party so that they invite all the people that have gotten dogs from them. And
the only way to get in is to bring your health records with you. No.
Let's show up
to the party. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, you gift. I had birthday parties all the time. I'm going to restart them, although most of my dogs aren't in North Carolina, so that'd be a trek for my puppies. But you know what? Now with Zoom, we could probably do it with Zoom. But you're absolutely right. Having that ability to know where your dogs are. And when we talk about making that plan for your dog, most breeders, some breeders, often breeders, co-own their dogs. And if that's the case, you have to talk to them if you're making a plan for your pet, because there may be somebody next door around the block, which we found with COVID. If you get sick and the person's in Connecticut or New Jersey or Delaware, they might not be able to get into New York State to get your dog. So you really need somebody nearby. But that co-owner has to know who that person is. And I know Marty and I love when people have people who know their dogs to be that next person to maybe take the dog if something happens to them. We just want to know where the dog goes, and we'll talk to that person and provide them with the same support we provided you. We just don't want the dog to be given away and we never know where it is. And I think that's the thing that's most difficult.
Definitely. Yeah. See that.
It's important for breeders to stay in touch with their owners, but it's just as important for their owners to stay in touch with them. And I know sometimes everybody has short tempers. I was saying, Marty, that all the cases coming across my desk now from AKC events, because people have short tempers and, hair triggers at dog shows these days. If we all just would take a breath and understand that everybody's a little crazy right now, so not get mad.
Well,
what you found.
Yeah, the examining boards are seeing increasing numbers of client complaints because people are sitting at home stewing about things that they would never have thought of before. So yeah, but honestly, a breeder would rather see your dog with long toenails than not see your dog. So it's okay to communicate with them. It's okay to take pictures that don't show the toenails. You can do those things, but you really, really want to stay in touch with your breeder because there's so many important things that they can do to help you as things evolve. And I actually sat down the other day and started writing a document about euthanasia and the different kinds of euthanasias that I have experienced with clients and which the hardest ones are because they're all hard. To me, the hardest one is the last pet that you'll ever own. And many of you may be in an age group that's exactly what you're experiencing, is this may be the last pet you ever have. And you need to make sure that that pet is well cared for if you get to a point in your life that you no longer can do so. So think it through, really think it through. It's so important.
You are absolutely right, because that's, I think, the balance, right? I don't want to live my life in my 70s and 80s without a dog, but am I still able to care for my dog the way I'm caring for them now in my 60s when I'm 80? I'm not so sure. But if you make plans up front for how you're going to care for that pet if something were to happen to you, even if, I'm sitting here in North Carolina going, there is a high school down the road. I'm going to get down there to the guidance counselor and I'm going to say, listen, does anybody want to learn how to take care of Irish setters? Because what you want to do is you want to start that discussion. You want to start that conversation. And during COVID, it's a little difficult, but if everybody wears masks and uses hand sanitizers, then you can move forward. And we are going to get out from under this someday.
Yeah.
In the future. And so you really need to make sure you take the time to find that person who's going to help you. I agree. I love you bringing that up, Marty, because I never want to think of that, but I know there will be a time when I may not have a dog. Some of us, and I know you might do this as well, some of us have older dogs that, if you're an older person and I've got an older dog who really doesn't appreciate all the commotion in my house, I might think, if I know you long enough and you're really great, I might think about letting you take that dog. But that means that I have to be part and parcel of that conversation, and I have to be there to help you if in the event, and I have to check in because, as we know, one of the 7Ds is dementia. And so you might be fine when I give you that 7-year-old dog, but 2 years later, when it's 9 and still kicking, you might not be able to care for it. And I have to be the one who, puts that in the agreement we have and the discussion we have that, I understand you're 80. I remember giving, so this is an interesting topic because I remember giving a woman a dog when she was 83. And Violet was 5 and she had spondylosis, so she wasn't jumping on anybody. So she was a safe dog for an 85-year-old. There was no way she was going to be jumping on her. However, I was worried about her being 85, and she was a whippersnapper. She said to me, and don't you dare think that I can't take care of a dog at 85. And I said, okay, fine. So I'd say 4 weeks, I would drive over the Tappan Zee Bridge and go see, I called them the old people because he was 90, she was 85. And Violet had this 2-acre yard to run in. They took her to church with them every Sunday. That she was in the car with them all the time. And once George died, Eleanor was alone with Violet, but Violet lived a great life because I was always checking in. And then they also had neighbors who were checking in who had my number. So yeah, if you don't think you can take care of the dog or don't want that responsibility, that's absolutely fine. And I'm all for it. But if you want that dog in your life, you actually have to do this MAAP plan and bring people into your life to make sure the dog isn't suffering and you don't know it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
It's really key. So we are going to check in one more time, guys. Any questions about the plans you're making? Last weekend, Marty, we held the last 2 weekends we held workshops where Connie and Sally and Susan and 2 other ladies worked together to build their MAAP plan. They were making a plan, appointing their caregivers. And that seems to be the hardest thing, Marty, finding those caregivers. It is hard. It is hard.
Because it's a lot of responsibility that you're heaping on someone, and you're asking a lot out of them. So yes, it is hard, but it may not be a permanent caregiver. It may be somebody that's the transient caregiver until someone else can get there or take over, or it doesn't have to be the only option that you give them. Is please just make sure she doesn't end up at a shelter or a rescue until my nephew can drive here from Colorado. Or
you hit the nail on the head, because of COVID, many of the people couldn't come, right? So
Right.
you really needed to meet your neighbors. And I told the group on several times before, walk around we're all walking our dogs now in COVID. So the neighbors who have dogs now. And I put 3x5 cards in their mailboxes and said, if something happens to you, I'm happy to take care of your dog until somebody comes, long term. And of the 15 I put out in boxes, 10 of them came back and gave me their number.
Mm-hmm.
So that, until somebody could come into New York, when Governor Cuomo shut New York down, until someone could come into New York, they could take care of my dogs. And I'm a firm believer in having people who are your neighbors, who might know your dogs, to say hello or whatever, to leave your dogs in the backyard. Please don't take them on a walk, because if your dogs don't really know them, then having them take your dogs on a walk could be like a disaster.
Yes.
Yes. So just leave them in the backyard. Have a fenced-in yard. If you don't have a fenced-in yard, buy a long line, one of those metal ones that you get at the dog store, not something that could fray and break, because you really want to make sure that the dogs are safe and secure. And they can't tie them out there, but surely if, you just want to make sure they can't get away. That's my big thing. So while we are here, I wanted to also ask, yes, what, Connie? You got to go?
I have to sign off.
All right. Good to see you, honey. Have a good board meeting. So Marty, and what other great tidbits could you share with us? Because I know that from your point of view as a veterinarian, we have discussed at length alerting your veterinarian to your new caregivers in case they had to bring the dog to the vet. If your name isn't on the vet's file, they really shouldn't take care of the dog. They might, but they shouldn't.
It depends on how urgent it is, but yes, they're probably going to provide care, but until you can make some other arrangements. Like if you were in a car accident, they're not going to tell you that they're not going to take care of the dog.
Right. There's some bill that my New York State Animal Law Committee is looking at that says that they aren't supposed to care, but I'll send that to you offline. It was very weird. It's a very weird bill in Pennsylvania, I think. But at this point, what's really interesting is making sure, we've all discussed it, we have cards on our refrigerators so that when the EMS come in, when we, God forbid, have had a heart attack on the floor, that we put that information on the fridge on a laminate card, if in the event of an emergency, because Marty, you and I wouldn't want our dogs to go to animal care and control. And if nobody's home but you and EMS comes, they will take the dogs to animal care and control.
Right.
And if you live alone, then you don't have anybody necessarily going to take them from animal care and control. And as I've told this group a few times, because I think 7 times you'll remember it, is that if that happens, your dog might go to a rescue, like a Coton rescue, Irish Setter rescue. Marty has beautiful corgis. And what was the other breed? Corgis and?
Danish Swedish farm dogs.
Danish Swedish farm dogs. Really beautiful, beautiful. But they go to that rescue, and if that rescue adopts them out, you can't get them back.
Right. Something in your car is also really important. There's a couple ideas here. One is if you're in an accident, that you have information in the car for where their veterinarian is and where their care should be provided and who can come and get them and take care of them after the accident. Because we've had clients get tragically injured and the dogs are not, so they may need care. I leave a card on the dashboard when I leave my vehicle so that if someone thinks my dogs are in trouble, that they will call my cell phone and not break a window and get in, which isn't quite the same as the topic that we're talking about, but it's still a tip that
it's absolutely. I'm so glad you said that, because now everybody doesn't think I'm like this harper who harps on this, but I want a card in your car saying my dogs are home alone. If they're not traveling with me, my dogs are home alone. This is who you call if I'm involved in an accident. Or if your dogs are in the car with you, my dogs are okay, please call these. 1 of 3 people. If you have to take them to animal care and control because, the crates are broken or whatever, or you can't, whatever, these are the 3 people to call. And you're absolutely right. The third one is if you have to run into the supermarket and the air conditioner's on in your car and the car is locked, right? You put I always say, put it right by the driver's side window and on the dashboard in case somebody's short and can't see the dashboard on these minivans and things.
It's 6 o'clock.
Mhm.
And say, you know something, I really need you to call me if you think something's wrong.
Right.
This is my number. And if you can't get me, this is the number. And if you can't, I always say 3 numbers, because God forbid you're standing in a store. Like, I'm always standing in Sam's Club and I never have service and I want to shoot myself. Not that I would leave my dogs, but sometimes at a dog show, I go get water at a Sam's Club.
Right.
And you're standing in Sam's Club, it doesn't have service. So just make sure that if you leave your dogs in the car with the engine running, locked, you leave big and not small. I mean, I use those big orange Post-it notes because I don't want anybody to miss them. This is not, I love the cards in your wallet, and that's great, but somebody has to look for that when you're bleeding on the pavement.
That's the priority.
Yeah, I'm about making it really easy for them to know where your pets are and how to take care of them.
Well, we had something really interesting happen to us. We were at we had my husband's minivan with empty dog crates in it because we didn't have dogs with us, but we always leave the crates in the car. Yeah. And we were at the racetrack, the horse racetrack in Des Moines, Iowa, and standing there in line, and Dan heard on the squawk box on the hip of the security guard that someone's vehicle was in the parking lot, and they were concerned that there were dogs locked in the crate. Well, our crates were empty, and he bolted out of the building, and
yeah, before they smashed the window to see there were no dogs in your car.
Exactly, and took the crate doors off. We have rough, tough kennels so that they have crate doors that just pop off both sides. Right. So he pulled the crate doors off and threw them in the vehicle so that you could see that there was nothing going on in the crate, that there was no dog in there. But he then said, we really need to have something on the window that says, crates are empty, there's nothing here at risk. The other really weird thing that happened is at Christmas time a couple of years ago, I had taken my staff shopping because we always do in a Salvation Army Adopt a Family. So we go out and buy the clothes and the shoes and the toys and the stuff that the kids need, right? So I had a puppy in the car, and a kid at the Walmart parking lot that was picking up carts had my license plate number paged over the PA system because my windows were up.
In the middle of winter.
It was
December. Of course they were.
It was December in Wisconsin. Yes, the windows should be up.
Yeah.
And he thought that the dog was going to suffocate. I'm like, no. That's not why we put windows down on our vehicles in the summertime. We do it because it gets too hot. Yeah. But they don't hire rocket scientists to pick up the carts at Walmart.
Yes.
So I accepted that fact and was glad that he didn't break my window and instead went to the service desk and had it reported. So I was able to go out and...
There's so many tidbits. Thank you so much, because that's one I never thought of. You know, to put a sign in the window, crates are empty, because that is as important for us who travel with our animals, to know that you got to, it's sort of like, what is it? No service, right? You can't take this taxi because there's no service. Okay, so this truck has crates in it, but there are no dogs. Right. Oh my God. I am so glad you came, as always, Marty. You are fabulous.
I have all kinds of little trivial things that no one ever thought they needed to know.
Well, I've been sharing a lot of the ones, so we probably have to get together to write a book of the trivial things you need to know.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll write a book, because there are trivial things you need to know that everybody says, I would have never thought of that. I would have never thought of that. I would have never thought of that. And I go, I know, it's a sickness. I sit up at night and I go, holy shit. Because for me, the reason I made the MAAP plan was because I needed to tell people who the people were who needed to know what their plan was. So it's not just the breeder, it's your veterinarian, it's your attorney, it's the neighbor next door, because the neighbor next door is going to see them carry you out in an ambulance. And so that neighbor needs to be able to raise her hand or his hand and say, I know where the dogs go, leave them alone.
Right, exactly.
And you might not even like your neighbor, and they might not want to let your dog out, and that's okay too. Just as long as they don't take them to animal care and control, we're good.
Yep, as long as that's the case, absolutely.
I mean, go ahead.
I don't change my microchip when I put the microchip in my puppies that I sell. I keep my name on first contact. And I know
I get calls all the time.
And you can tell AKC Reunite that they can't change it, so that they will continue to keep you as their first contact. And the reason I do that is because I've had too many people tell me stories as clients that have sold dogs as young puppies or adults, that dog took off, ended up...
And they never found it.
Shelter. No, they ended up in the Humane Society or at a veterinary clinic on emergency, and they're calling the person who's out looking for the dog instead of the person that owns the dog. or owned the dog and bred the dog, and that's the person who can still make medical decisions. Like this, we had one that literally the day she took the dog home, the dog escaped out the front door when she opened the door to get the mail, ran out, got hit by a car, broke its back, and they called the microchip number. And unfortunately, it was out of state. Fortunately, they got a hold of the breeder. Unfortunately, the dog had a broken back and could not be saved. But they knew right away what kind of medical decisions to be making instead of leaving the dog to suffer. So someone could make a decision. So there's lots of there's all kinds of little trivial things. Some of them are in the book and some of them are not. So yes, we need to sit down and write something. You're absolutely right.
Absolutely, because this MAAP group has been meeting since March, and we have done what you've been doing, writing your book with your colleague. It's that, what do you have to think about during COVID? I hope you come back with a few more of the tidbits, because we loved having you here, Marty. You're fabulous. Wow. We only stayed for a half hour, so we're 5 minutes over, and I want to make sure.
Sorry.
Yeah. No. We sometimes are 10 or 15 minutes over, so it's not like it's, I just want to make sure everybody knows. Susan or Sally, do you have anything to add? Because we got some really great tips from Marty today.
Well, I have a question, Deborah. If I'm in my car with my dog and I have an accident, and nobody can be reached as far as what will happen to the dog? Animal control will take it where?
Well, if you don't have numbers on your dashboard that people can call and be reached, so your husband could be reached, maybe your son could be reached, but maybe not. Maybe your neighbor could be reached, maybe your girlfriend, maybe a vet tech. Some of the people who are your caregivers could be reached. But if they can't be reached, then it goes to animal care and control. And then what happens is they need to have a number to call. So that card on your dashboard has to have the numbers that need to be called if something happens to you. So it could be your number, but if you're, God forbid, in a coma or in surgery, they're not going to get you. So it has to be the people who are your caregivers for your pet who are on that card in your car.
So what if it's like a boarding facility for dog? Will somebody transport my dog to that facility? Or will that facility have to?
Not unless you make an arrangement for that. So that's why if you put the dog boarding facility as one of the people to call, I mean, you can always call them and ask. And we've had, those boarding people who've been part of our group who said, some of them said they would, some of them said they wouldn't. You have to check with them. But you really just need to make sure that there's someone there who can go and get the dog and transport it if it won't be transported to the kennel by the kennel people.
That's going to be tricky. Yeah.
Animal control will usually hold them for about 72 hours. So it's not as if it has to happen in the first 10 minutes.
No, it doesn't. Yeah, you're hopeful that there's someone nearby. I mean, when we go to dog shows, Marty and I keep in touch with the people who are going with us. So they're either behind us or in front of us, and they can sometimes come and get our dogs within 24 hours. I think most legislative timeframes are between 3 to 5 days before they release them to, especially if you're in the hospital, if they release them to a shelter or a rescue or something. They want to get in touch with you. So you really need to be able to answer your phone or have a number giving someone permission to answer for you. So on that, remember it says, if I can't speak, these are the 3 people who you need to call and they can speak for me and they have permission to take my dog.
And also, like if there was some kind of pet transportation company that, the dog's at animal control, well, can I call that pet transportation company to take?
Well, you can if you can, but if you can't, someone else has to do it for you. So often it's better to find someone who is going to step in to be you when you're in the hospital.
Right. But lacking that, I'm just thinking, what is the fail-safe,
The fail-safe would be is if you find a dog taxi that you can, put on as someone who would be the commuter between wherever you are. You might be in another state and that dog taxi isn't going to come there. That's why it's always better to find the caregivers who are willing to, be boots on the ground near you. I mean, as I said, I'm moving to North Carolina. I'm redoing my whole MAAP plan because I'm going to be in North Carolina. The good news is I have several friends in North Carolina. The bad news is they're all 3 hours away because I'm on the coast and they're in the middle of the state, but they're here. So I'm now, navigating new veterinarians that are nearby. I'm navigating new people. That's why I said I would go to the high school. I would go to the local, vets and see if any of the vet techs were interested, because you really need to have somebody who is going to be that person, and you need three, remember, not just one, to be that person to step in. So that's why I would keep talking to your breeder to see who she knows in the area who has Catons, because we tend to be much more willing to do things for our fellow breed lovers than we are just for the man in the street.
No, I agree. That's true.
You know, if somebody loves Catons, they're going to, you know, be there. And you can even, you know, call the local Caton rescue if there is one, and say, listen, if something happens, is there a way that I might work with you to hold my dog until I get better? Because then they know what they're doing. So the rescues usually place the dogs when they can't find the owners. And once they place them, the dogs are gone. They're gone. If they can't find the owner, if animal care and control and the shelter say, you know, no owner has come forward, then they're allowed to place the dog and then, you know, get it back. But if you proactively find a Caton rescue that will work with you, like, remember we had the North Shore Animal League people on here who said, yeah, we'll hold the dog and we'll give it back to you once you're ready. You just have to pay for it. And I don't think that's a problem. It's just that you have to set it up beforehand. You can't expect them to read your mind before.
Right. No,
you have to set that up. So all these little pieces are key.
Right. No, I hear you.
So no, and it's a process. And as Marty said, she and I could come up with 25 different scenarios that none of you have ever thought of before, because that's what we do at night. We sit up and think about, oh, what would happen to one of our puppies about this? And I don't change my microchips either. I really don't. I never change them. I get the calls. I know who the dog is. This dog lives in, you know, Stonebridge, Connecticut. Oh, I know who that is. And then I can call the owner, who happened to be in Puerto Rico when the dog was lost, and her mother was watching the dogs and she had no idea. But the dog was in a garage down the street. And, you know, it's that you just need to have someone who's always going to answer the phone and be there.
Right. My brother doesn't use microchips, so my dog does not have one.
Yeah, well, you can get one at your vet.
Yeah.
It doesn't hurt them. Marty, when do you microchip? I microchip about, well, maybe 8 weeks, just before 12 weeks when I leave.
Yeah, usually that's when I do it. But I have microchipped my own puppies as early as 10 days of age.
Yeah.
Even though that's not what the microchip company said. I did that with a litter that I did a dual sire breeding on. So I knew that.
Who was who?
Yeah, I knew when I did my cheek swabs who was who. So you can do it that early, and they don't migrate and they don't hurt. And my puppies screamed like bloody hell when I put the microchip in. I put the cheek swab in, but not a sound when I put in the microchip at 10 days.
Yeah, I know. It makes no sense, right? It's because you're doing their mouth. And I swear, if you touch their mouth,
they're like, oh my God.
Yeah, because you might stop me from eating. So please don't do that.
Right. But they didn't make a sound about the microchip. And that one dog that I have, she is now 14. And her microchip is still where I put it. So
yeah. No, you just have to be brave. I've been microchipping my puppies since, I guess, 1992. My 1991 litter was not microchipped, and then somebody gave one of my puppies away. So that taught me very quickly why I needed to microchip all my puppies and register them to me. And then go from there. Microchips are not dispositive because, you know, we talked about that. It's whether or not, you know, the dog is at a shelter and scanned, or, you know, if somebody says they found this dog, veterinarians are not necessarily required to scan the dog. They're, you know, you brought it in, you're the owner. They're not going to, you know, question you whether you're the owner. So microchips are very good. Not perfect, but then there's not anything perfect in this world. You know, you do the best you can, but until, you know, everything is without, you know, trickery, I guess, you really do the best you can. Marty, thank you so much for coming. Yes, we are going to have to do this this book together on, you just did the COVID puppy, and we'll do the COVID ownership, because, you know, the thing that really was troubling for me is all the shelters said, once these people go back to work, they're going to drop off these dogs. And I said, well, that could happen if that's the energy you put out there. But if you put the energy out there that we are going to put in place things to help people figure out how to go back to work with a dog at home, then we won't have dogs going back to the shelter. So, you know, that is a key piece. So
that was my motivation. Was to keep dogs in homes, because I had a lot of people in my ear saying humane societies and shelters are going to be overrun, and all these dogs are going to have separation anxiety and blah blah blah. And I don't think that's likely to happen.
Nope. Nope.
But I-
And you just have to teach people. So all these people got dogs who maybe never had a dog before in their lives. The dogs saved their lives during COVID. Now we have to help them save the dog's life when they go back. It's sort of like riding a bike. You have to figure out how to do training wheels. That's when the puppy comes home and you're home with it all the time. And that's the perfect world. None of us have ever had it before. And now there's the training wheels, the bigger model where you go back to work and you have to figure out how to help the dog navigate being alone for a few hours. And the good news is, and this might be an old wives' tale, but I don't think it is, dogs don't really know time. They, you go out and put the garbage out and you come back in and they say hello to you as if you left for the entire day. So not that you should leave a dog alone a very long time. I mean, I always had people coming in to let my dogs out at lunchtime and at 3 o'clock, and then I got home at 6. But, they don't really tell you, you've been gone for 3 hours. 5 minutes or 3 hours, it's the same to them, especially if you leave them a nice frozen Kong or something to chew on instead of your Le Boulier chew heels, which they like just as much as the Kongs.
They're hoping you don't come home soon because they're very busy.
Yes, they're very busy or they're very tired. I love the memes they did where the dogs and cats were going, can you go back to work? I am just so tired. You want to walk all the time. I don't want to walk.
Yeah. First the kids walk the dog, and then the husband walks the dog, and then the wife walks the dog. And then we had people calling us and saying, why is my dog having 4 stools a day?
You're walking the poop out of them.
4 times a day. You're killing them.
You're killing them, right? You're calling the poop. Marty, thank you so much for coming. Susan, as always, thank you so much for coming. Sally, thanks so much for coming. Rose, we'll see you soon. And until next time, this is Deborah Hamilton, Hamilton Law Mediation, the Why Do Pets Matter podcast, and of course, my wonderful community here. Thank you so much.